the weekend special Akaza. And fully when Doma is finally finished, but that won't come anytime soon. But anyways, this is a Akaza X female listener, and it will probably change the story, so do be warned. This story is 18 plus. There is none of that oogly googly. It's just a lot of descriptive language. Actually, I think there's oogly googly if I remember. But there's also mature themes as violence, foul language, inappropriate behavior, disrespectful language of an individual, and descriptive language of gore, as well as subjects that may be sensitive for some. Once we get to those episodes, I will tell no matter what. And this story, of course, takes place during the Demon Slayer timeline, but will not follow all of the main plots. So, be wary. But anyways, here is Akaza. Chapter 0, Threat. Why did people always have to be so noisy? It was honestly a question I found myself asking a little too often on a normal day. But now, being in such a busy city with mounds of people, well, I'd gotten a headache before I'd even stepped foot in this chaotic place. It was as if the city itself was no more than to come alive at night. And not just from it the people. No, it was everything here that seemed to be overflowing with a strong sense of visibility. I didn't entirely explain it. I groaned, lifting myself up from the roof from one of the multiple shops that littered above, finally escaping the noise and the heat of the crowd. Because it wasn't even just the noise that aggravated me, but the grimy heat of being so close to people made me debate whether I would have or could have just stripped down to feel like I could actually breathe for once. The mask on the lower half of my face surely wasn't helping either, but at least hid the scowl from my lips that seemed unbearable to disappear for the last hour I'd been here. Settling down onto the slightly slanted roof, I observed the streets from up above, letting out a long breath before tossing my small bag beside me. Slinging off my dark hood, I decided to keep my mask up just in case. I couldn't let myself relax just yet. After all, my job here isn't finished. Not yet. Collapsing down beside my bag, I still allowed myself to close my eyes, if only for a moment. And that was when the exhaustion really kicked in. Traveling for days on end would take a toll on anyone, really. I'd give anything for even a half an hour nap right now. I scrunched up my nose, knowing my wish wouldn't come true anytime soon. Eyes still closed, I focused on my breathing, trying my best to cancel out any constant chatter of people down below. I opened my mind to more calming noises. The whistling of the wind. The slight melody of the music that played from a distance. I could even smell the many food stalls and shops cooking away for tourists and residents of the city. I suppose this place was actually quite nice. And honestly, if I had a chance, if I'd been born in a different life than the one I was given, I would have liked to expose such liveliness. But I wasn't allowed to think such things anymore. I wasn't allowed to appreciate the beauty of this. I learned to shove that part of me away for the past few years. Because of now, the beauty of it was merely a nuisance. A test to see if I'd allowed myself to be distracted from the real reason I was here. And I could never afford distractions. I had one job to do here, and it was not to frolic around and spend money or dance or even try any food types the way everyone else was at the moment. No. My mission was instructed to me as the same purposed manner as it always was. Get the job done quickly. don't make a mess, and most importantly, don't get caught. I said abruptly, letting a sigh out before bringing my knees up to my chest and wrapped my arms around them. One of my old habits I could never seem to kick. I had snapped out of it to find my targets and eliminate them. Standing up, I ignored the way my muscles screamed at me for rest. I always had to ignore it, knowing I had to push through. Maybe if I could just kill this group of people quickly, though, I could actually make it back sooner than I expected. If I get my mission done early, maybe I can get extra pay from my master this time too. Being one of the most renounced assassins in Japan did have its perks after all. And on that note, I slid free the knife I had planted in my sleeve, palming it loosely in my hand while at the same time reaching down to grab the bag I tossed. Twirling the thin blade between my fingers, a few times I groaned once again, pulling my hood up before leaping noiselessly off the roof and into an alley once more. Get the job done quickly. Don't make a mess. Don't get caught. Right. Annoyingly enough, it had taken me almost an entire day to track down the rebel merchants down and kill them off. Luckily, however, they were all together once I had located them. The hard part had been over at that point, and all that was left was the 5 slices it took to dispose of them. To be honest, the part was even more difficult than what came after. The absolute mess left. I always tried my best to be clean and quiet about my kills, but some idiots love to put on an entire show of screaming and fighting back, and it made it a hell of a lot harder for me to get my job done. Those people were the ones who truly didn't want to die, the ones who begged, prayed for help. And even though I'd been instructed to kill these people, I couldn't help my mind from being swayed towards the fact that they didn't entirely seem like bad people. I'm sure my master had his reasons for this, the need to have them gone like he always did. But even so, it never stopped me from thinking. Cleaning off my blade, and eventually after I had completed my job, I shook those useless thoughts out of my head because I knew, better than anyone, that no matter how kind people seem, there are always a slither of darkness in each one of them, a side to people that usually lay deep within their skin like an invisible parasite that crawled around in their soul. And I had to remind myself of that fact. Hidden in an alleyway, amongst one of the many streets that littered about the city, I inspected my cleaning work, getting frustrated whilst replaying the incident in my head. I could have been much faster, much cleaner. Gritting my teeth, I sheathed my newly shined blades into their usual spot while muttering curses under my breath, mostly at myself, but also at the people I'd killed. Idiots. I'd run too close to the time I'd given myself. It was too close of a call. I damn well could have been caught if I'd been a minute later with anything, especially since 2 of them had decided to try and make a break for it. Chasing them down was not something I'd planned. And what was even more irritating was that I could get no information out of them. The only goddamn info my master was so desperate to give, I still never knew what it was he wanted to know so desperately, enough to make and take away the lives of others. But it was done. I still managed to make do. No matter the situation, I was trained to finish the job at any cost. Any assassin of my ranking would have to be able to. Now, I could move on to the next group, a different place, a different town, and finally, I'd get the pay I needed. I blocked out the sound of laughter that came from the street, lit up with the same joy and liveliness that seemed to come back each night. I was grateful for finally being allowed to leave this place, this distraction, such a heavy reminder of the life I could have had. Slipping back into the crowded streets, I ran through the 3 rules that had been set into my brain like a tattoo, constantly at my mind, making my way out of the joyful city and back into the familiar darkness. I ran through it over and over again, as I always did. Get the job done quickly. Don't make a mess. Don't get caught. However, the last rule had been broken quite unknowingly. Well, for the most part. For there had been a certain pair of eyes watching from underneath a white remnant hat. The entire mission of hers in the luxurious city. Despite the skill she obtained of being discreet, the young assassin had no recollection of her observer.